Valencia. He's the Latin America reporter for Newsweek, and he's joining us live from New York. Very good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. I want to talk more about the situation in Venezuela that is, of course, driving these millions of Venezuelans to leave the country. On Monday, the new currency is going to be introduced by the government, where essentially they've slashed, I think, 5 zeros off the bolivar to devalue the currency to try and manage inflation, which I think is going to reach something like 1 million percent in 2018. What are you hearing, Mr. Valencia, about the effect the devaluation is already having?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. This is going to yield very little results. Let's just put it this way. It's going to create a lot of confusion among Venezuelans because now they're going to have to face a new currency. Now, as you mentioned, they have to slash a couple numbers. So now stores in Caracas and some other places in Venezuela, they are actually putting a price tag in dollars so that people understand the cost of a particular item. This is going to provide a permanent solution, not a permanent solution, a temporary solution rather. So for example, if the government can slash a couple of numbers, they will be able to pay short-term debt. But as they continue with any sort of economic mismanagement, they're going to force the central bank to print more banknotes. And that's the reason why Venezuela has a high hyperinflation that is projected to reach at least 1 million % according to the International Monetary Fund. So it provides a very small solution, but the policies that the Maduro administration has implemented all over the years will continue. It will create this vicious cycle where Venezuelans are going to have to, they're going to have to bring a lot of banknotes in their pockets again.
Yeah. The other thing the government is doing is anchoring the new currency to the cryptocurrency, Venezuela's cryptocurrency, the petro. What do you make of that? There has been a lot of skepticism about this. The cryptocurrency rating site, ICO Index, has labeled the petro a scam.
Correct, and that is one of the concerns that many economists have, because the currency or the new currency that will be rolled out tomorrow it doesn't have the backing of a large or of a stronger currency like, say, euro or dollars. That's another thing. Venezuelans are not clear whether they can do any kind of foreign exchange because the money, the new currency, is actually backed by petro, which in turn is backed by oil reserves. This is reserved, so to speak, to pay debt to countries like Russia and China. And nobody wants to touch any of those toxic bonds that Venezuela has in the market. So that is where the problem is. I think the fact that Venezuelans are not 100% sure whether they can do any kind of exchange, that's where it creates a lot of problem. And the other thing that actually creates a whole problem with the economy is that in addition to the new announcement of banknotes starting tomorrow is the reduction of oil or fuel subsidies that a lot of Venezuelans rely on.
Yeah.
As you well know, fuel prices are the cheapest in the entire world. And it brings back memories of what happened in 1989, what they called the Caracazo, where a lot of people went out on the streets to loot, to riot, because those subsidies were completely removed from the population. They rely on this money to buy cheap gas.
And despite all of these problems that we're talking about that Venezuelans are facing, neighboring countries are making it harder for them to enter. So do you think South America need a policy now on how to deal with Venezuelan refugees in the same way that Europe does with the refugees that it's facing?
Correct. Unfortunately, what we were seeing, for example, in Brazil, is that the locals in the state of Roraima are burning down some of the tents and the possessions, the belongings that many Venezuelans bring with them when they had to flee their country. Colombia cannot carry the burden or the brunt of the crisis, and that's why Nikki Haley, who visited Colombia for the swearing in of President Ivan Duque, pledged to pour U.S. aid to Colombia so that they can work with Venezuelan refugees. But as we've heard from the correspondent, now South American countries and even Central American countries like Panama are establishing restrictions for Venezuelans to visit these countries. I think it's not the best solution to a humanitarian crisis. I think we all agree that there's a humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, but the first step for a solution is for the Maduro government to recognize that there is actually a crisis in Venezuela. But we're not going to see that because they do not want to recognize that the economy is faltering.
Mr. Valencia, we thank you very much for your time and your expertise on this. That's Robert Valencia joining us live from New York. Thank you.